Hey guys, with you here for day 6, and things are a little bit different than what we've done so far. So you're kind of on your own to take some notes, and so you want to find a scrap piece of paper um, before we get started. But you do have a daily blog first. I'm asking you about, can we draw a couple different activities on a graph? Okay, and so take a look at that. We give you 5 hours a day. Okay, and you're going to try to draw something that can show us a combination, any combination of how we can spend that time. So narrow it down to two different things a day. Again, for me, I'm going to choose watching Netflix and hanging out with my kids. And so anyway, do something to pause it, try to come up with something, try to draw it on a graph, and we'll get back together here shortly. Okay, so um, like I said, I chose to do watch Netflix or hang out with my kids. We'll get to how I drew it in a second. If you're like most people, most kids I've had in the past are going to draw something like this. They'll draw this and put like a 3 and a 2, right? Something like that. Some people do a pie chart. Some people will do this and say like 3 and 2 or whatever. Excuse my drawing there. It's kind of hard for me to draw on my screen. But what we want you to do, and we're going to get good at this as we move forward here the next few minutes here, is we want you to draw a graph like this, okay? And you're going to label each axis. So I'm going to label Netflix, okay, and hanging out with my kids. All right. Now, like we said, we have 5 hours. So I'm just going to label my axes as well by the ones. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right. And I'm going to do the same for my kids here. 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. Now, like we said, we can spend all of our time hanging out with my kids. So I can spend 5 hours hanging out with my kids. Notice that that also lines up with the 0 hours of Netflix right here. Okay. Now I can do the opposite. I can hang out, or I can ignore my kids and be a bad father and go 5 hours of Netflix and 0 hours with my kids. If you kind of look through it, you're going to figure out where we're headed here. I can go 4 and 1, I can go 3 and 2, etc. I can eventually draw this straight line here that's going to show me all of the stuff that I can do. Okay, so we call that the production possibilities curve, even though there's not much of a curve to it. And again, it's showing us, it's representing how many different options we have to be able to spend my time. Now, you might be thinking, well, I could do way more than two things. This is this idea of economics. We're going to keep it simple, okay? And we can only analyze two things, okay? So this is that term opportunity cost we talked about the other day, where you are thinking about what is your next best option, okay? So anyway, that's how it's drawn there. Now, when we talk about time, it's pretty easy. We got 1 hour, 1 hour. Like I give up my time to do certain things. It's pretty straightforward. But in some cases, things become a little bit more complicated. All right. So, for example, here, um, you have another question. Notice we changed some things on you. Okay. So we have a farmer with a piece of land. And on that land, if he uses all of it, he can produce 10 bushels. He can produce 10 bushels of soybeans or 20 bushels of corn. Okay, or you can kind of do any mix in between. So what your job is, okay, is you're trying to figure out, if I decide to grow one more bushel of soybeans, how much corn do I have to give up? Okay, we're going to try to draw this on a graph as well. Take a second, pause it. I'll show you what my grid paper looks like. Eventually, I'm going to do that, right? And it's going to look something. We're going to obviously draw on there. So that kind of gives you a little bit of a hint. You don't necessarily absolutely have to have graph paper. Pause the video, see if you can't draw what we're trying to show, as well as figuring out how much producing one extra of each is. Okay, so hopefully you took a shot at it. All right, the first thing we've got to do anytime we have a graph is we've got to label the axes. Okay, so I'm going to put soybeans here. and I'm going to put corn down here. All right. And from there, I got to double check. Okay, I can make 20 bushels of corn. I'm going to label it 20 right there, or 10 bushels of soybeans. Okay, so I'm just going to label those graphs right there. I'm going to make it easy. All right, and then if you paid attention earlier, you know that the next step is we just got to draw a straight line right here. Okay, as straight as possible. I'm going to give it another shot. Draw a straight line right there as best that you can. Hopefully, like I said, yours is better than mine, but we're trying to do the best that we can with the materials that I've got. All right. And again, this should show us, okay, that, we have different possible production on this particular line. Okay. We're not worried about a perfectly drawn line. That's not what we need to do. But we do need to figure out how much producing one more unit of each is. It's a pretty simple way to do that. So the way that I like to do it is I'm going to take my 10 soybeans. I'm just going to label it with an S. And remember, that's if I use all my land to grow soybeans, right? So 10S, all my land, is also going to equal 20 units of corn. So I got 10S equals 20C. The next step is I just got to solve for the letters. So I got to divide my S by 10. I got to divide that by 10. And now I have one soybean equals 20 divided by 10 is 2 units of corn. Okay, pretty straightforward there. Alrighty, now I got to do the other way too. How much does it cost to produce 1 unit of corn? Okay, so I start over. I'm going to take this. I'm going to divide it by 20. Okay, here, you know what? I'm getting a little bit too complicated. All right, I'm cluttering things up. So I'm going to start this problem over. Okay, so I got 10 S equals 20 corn. And now I got to solve for C. So divide by 20, divide by 20, okay? That's going to equal 1 corn equals 1 half soybeans. I'm going to put a box around these so I know what you're trying to show me, okay? So I can see your final answer. And that's how you figure out opportunity cost. So if the question was, what is the opportunity cost of producing a unit of soybeans, you would say 1S equals 2 units of corn. Okay, let's do one more practice problem here before we finish things up. Okay, another problem here. We have 12 bushels of turnips, 4 bushels of potatoes. Okay, you're asked to solve that math equation as well as draw a graph. You don't need, in this case, any graph paper. Okay, so pause the video here real quick and take your shot. All right. So the first thing I'm going to do anytime I have a problem like this is draw my axes. And again, sometimes you'll have axes available to you. Other times, usually not. Okay. So I double checked what I need to draw. I got turnips. And I can produce 12 turnips. All I got to do is label that one point right there. So I can produce 12 turnips or 4 potatoes. So I produce 4 units of potatoes. Okay. And now all I got to do is I got to connect these dots. And that's it. Okay, so now I'm set. I've got my graph. I've got my production possibilities graph. Now we've got to do some math. So I've got my 12 turnips equals 4 potatoes. I've got my math. I'm going to solve for P first. I'm going to say 1 potato, divide by 4, 1 potato equals 3 turnips. All right, and now I'm going to show you a shortcut. You can always start from the top if you'd like. Remember to put your box around this so I know what you're trying to show me. Okay, I'm going to show you a shortcut. I'm not going to rewrite the problem. I'm simply going to solve for t from here. So I'm going to say 1t. Again, I divided by 3, right? Divide by 3 equals 1/3 of a potato. Draw your box around it. That's what you should come up with. Okay, all these numbers are always going to be reciprocals of each other. So that is another way you can kind of get yourself through the problems. Okay, last concept that we have here is that we know that sometimes things aren't as simple as what we like to be able to draw sometimes. So if we're talking about, let's just talk about Elkhart. And Elkhart has some farms on it. It also has some, RV factories. Well, certain land is more applicable to being used as farmland than factory land, right? Just like we can't grow a farm in a swamp, right? That's not how it works. It would be very wasteful of that land. So some people, okay, and some resources have more skill, more utilization for certain things. And so if we were to draw that on a graph here, okay, use my drawing once again. If we were to draw that on a graph here, okay, same thing. We're going to start with our axes. I used the example of corn, sorry, corn and RVs. Well, if we can let people specialize, we actually can get what we can refer to as a bow in our production possibilities curve. And the reason that bow exists again is because of specialization. We're going to let the people that are good at being farmers be farmers. We're going to let the people that are good at producing RVs produce RVs, and we should be somewhere. We want to produce somewhere on this curve. We could make everybody be farmers if we want. That wouldn't be very smart. That wouldn't be very efficient. We can make everybody grow RVs if we wanted to. That wouldn't be very efficient. We want to be somewhere in the middle so as many people are being as efficient as possible. Okay. Last concept I have is we can also make predictions about what will happen in an economy if certain things occur. So we're going to go back to our corn and RV graph. You can draw a new one if you'd like. Okay. And we can say, all right, what would happen if we get some new technology in fertilizer, as an example, to be able to grow corn faster? Okay. Well, first of all, what we've got to understand is we're only talking about corn in this case, okay? So we've got new fertilizer, okay? What would we expect our production possibilities curve to do? Well, the first thing we've got to understand is it doesn't say anything about RVs, okay? It only talks about corn for our fertilizer. So what we would say is, hey, we're going to make a prediction that a new graph would look something like this. And I'm going to indicate what I did. I'm going to make a little arrow right there, just like that. That's going to show that we could say, hey, listen, we're better at growing corn. We can grow more. We can predict, right, which is what economists do. We can predict what would happen. All right. Let's talk about a couple other ones here, and then we'll be good for today. Okay. So we had the fertilizer. All right, let's say that we had an increase in population. So a baby boom maybe would be something that we would be able to add to it. So let's just say that there's a baby boom. Okay, what would that do for our future production in the economy? Well, corn needs people to grow it. RV factories need people to produce them. So we could say in this case we have an increase in both. We would say, hey, our graph is going to do something like that. If we had, say, oh, I don't know, let's just use COVID as an example to be a little bit morbid here. So COVID, people die, right? All right. So if we have COVID, what's that going to do for our future production? Well, we're going to have fewer workers. And again, like I said, being a little bit morbid, but using a real life example of what you can make a prediction, we're going to say that our production would shrink. Okay. So anyway, you could also say, hey, listen, maybe some land falls into the ocean or something, and we have less land to grow corn. We could shrink just corn as well if we wanted to, or you could use climate change as an example of growing corn or whatever. So different things will affect the graph in different ways. Um, make sure that you check the notes, you check the assignment. Okay, the assignment's going to be a hard copy, and you'll be able to do it online too. But it's your assignment for this stuff. I'll give you some separate directions. This stuff's a little bit different, right? It's not just memorizing facts. You've got to learn the concept here and be able to apply it. So by all means, if you need to communicate, by all means, email. I'm open to. I haven't really mentioned this. Google Meets, or if we need to meet kind of face to face for those of you that are virtual people that won't be coming in, we'll figure out a way to do it. The best time for me to do that would be anytime on Friday, and any days between about 1:20 until 3 o'clock, if we can set something up. So realize that that is an option for you when we get to that, if you get to that particular point. Okay, so be patient with some of this stuff. We'll get some practice as we continue moving forward, and hopefully you're able to um, be comfortable with what we're getting to. Okay, hang in there. I think things are going pretty smooth. I appreciate you guys that are turning stuff in and staying on top of those things. Those of you that have maybe missed a little bit, you'll see it won't take you too long to get caught up. My videos are usually 14 minutes long or so, so make sure that you are taking care of business. We'll see you guys soon.